Well, we're going to open up to Genesis 45, and we're going to go to the 4th verse and read from the 4th to the 7th.
All right.
There are some things I do not know. There are some places I cannot go. But there's one thing that I am sure, that God is real, and I can feel Him in my soul. There are some things I do not know. There are some places I cannot go. But there's one thing that I am sure, that God is real, and I can feel Him in my soul. Yes, God is real in my soul. Yes, God is real, for He has washed and made me whole. His love for me is sweet as pure gold. Yes, God is real, and I can feel Him in my soul. I'm going to ask that somebody start at the 4th verse.
Yes.
Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do you not distress me, and now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me here ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing or reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance."
So we all should, or I'll do a little recap. So we kind of know the story of Joseph, right? Mm-hmm. And so Joseph was the son of Jacob, and Joseph was the favorite of all the brothers, right? And so because Joseph was the favorite, his siblings hated him. They hated him. They hated how much his father loved him. They hated how much, they felt like everybody else was in one category and he was just lifted above. And so they didn't like Joseph at all, in fact. And there was a one time where Jacob gave Joseph this beautiful robe, and it just sent the brothers on edge, right? So they're like, what is this? Like, I know that we have favorites, but we're not supposed to show them, right? Everybody's supposed to know, they're not supposed to know this. And so one night, Joseph had this dream. And like many of us, we got to share it with our loved ones. We got to tell what God has given us, right? We got to tell it. And so he went to the brothers and he told them, he said, I had this dream, and I had a dream that we were all tying up these bundles, and then all of a sudden, mine like lifted up, and you guys' bundles bowed to me. And so the brothers, they just was like, who do you think you are? Like, you think we're going to bow to you? And who put you up here in this place, to think that? But, Joseph, just naively just telling his siblings, what God, the vision that God had given them. Right. And so Joseph ended up having another dream. And I guess he didn't get the message the first time, because even after his siblings had just, did not receive it well the first time, he decided that he was going to tell not only them, but he was going to tell the father as well. And so Joseph, he told him again, he said, in this dream, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And so the brothers they were furious. And so they said, this is it. I've had it with this arrogant guy. He just walking around thinking that he's everything. And so the brothers had plotted to kill him. And so they said, well, we're going to kill him. And so one day they saw Joseph coming, and they said, here's our chance. You know, we got him by himself. You know, that's how the enemy is. He tries to just double team, triple, quadruple team. So they get him by themselves, and they said, we're going to do this. But then the brother, Reuben said, you know, why should we kill him? Why should our blood be on, you know, why should his blood be on our hands? We're not going to kill him. Let's just throw him in this little pit over here. Let's throw him in this little pit and let him die. And that way, you know, it won't be on us. But see, Reuben, secretly, his plan was to go back and save Joseph. So his plan, even though he acted, you know, that he was right along with the plan, his plan was to go back and save his brother. But see, the problem is you can't entertain evil and try to come out and fix it with good. I remember I may have just graduated college, or I was in my last year of college, and I had this friend. I mean, we were like best friends. I mean, partners in crime. And we had kind of started drifting apart. It was no specific reason, you know. It wasn't like we had fallen out. It wasn't like, you know, we had, you know, were irritating each other, anything like that. We just kind of started drifting apart. And for me, it was so hard to accept this. It was so hard. And I remember there was this event, and so my friend went to this event. It was a musical event. Now everybody knows me. I love music. That's my thing. And I love country music. And the event that she was going to had some country stars that I love. They were some of my favorite country stars. And so she hadn't told me about it. I found out the day when she was posting pictures and all of that. And so I remember maybe like a couple days later, I was talking to her about it. And I said, you know, why didn't you tell me? You know, I would have loved to go. And it wasn't so much that she didn't invite me. It was the fact that we were already drifting apart, and I couldn't understand it. And so I couldn't understand it, so I kind of got in my feelings. And she was like, you know, well, I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, I didn't invite you. I know that you would have loved to come, but I didn't invite you because of how the event was. And I said, well, what do you mean? And so she said, well, even though it's made and it was created for music, a lot of people that go there drink and smoke. And so she said, I know you, Aneika. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you know, you don't even want to be bothered with all of that. And so I just decided I wasn't even going to invite you. And that bothered me, because I said, I'm a grown woman, you know? Invite me, and if I choose not to partake, I choose not to partake. I don't understand, you know, it bothered me because I couldn't understand. You didn't even give me a choice. You didn't even ask me. And I remember just all day it was just bothering me. I remember telling Shannon about it, and I'm just like, you know, I don't understand, like, you know, why can't people just let me choose for myself? And I remember that night I was just thinking, and I was talking to God about it, and I just heard the Holy Spirit say, you're guilty by association, right? And so I said, you know, he's like, even though you were going to go and listen to music, the intent of the event is for people to drink and smoke. And so, no, you don't drink and smoke, but you're guilty by association. I think it's in 1 Thessalonians 5, maybe 22nd verse. It says, stay away from anything that looks evil. Anything that looks evil, abstain from it. Stay away from it. And so, this is how Reuben was. You know, he was guilty by association. Even though he wanted to go back and save Joseph, the intent of the plot was evil. And so you can't try to mask evil with good. You can't entertain evil and then think you're going to mask it with good later on, because that doesn't happen. And that's what happened. So without Reuben knowing, the brothers ended up selling Joseph into slavery. And he came back and he said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm paraphrasing. I'm paraphrasing. Say, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And so they killed this animal. I believe it was a goat. They killed it and put blood over his jacket and took it back to Jacob, the father, and basically tried to make it seem like he got killed by a wild animal. And so Jacob, he mourned deeply because that was his favorite son. He mourned so deeply. Well, Joseph got sold to Potiphar. And before I go on, I want to say that the title of my scripture is, It Ain't Always About You. Now, I graduated. I know grammatically it should be, it's not. But sometimes when you say ain't, it kind of adds a little attitude. So you kind of say, it ain't always about you. You kind of dip your head a little bit, you know. And so the subject is, it ain't always about you. And so Joseph got sold to Potiphar. And Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. And so Potiphar noticed the favor over Joseph's life. God had favored Joseph, and he noticed this. And so he put him over everything. He put him over everything, and he said, you know, everything that's mine, I put you over. And so sometimes, you know, when that happens, you know, I should say, it's men and women, but sometimes you see that one individual and it just seems like everything they touch is just successful, everything. And so Potiphar had this wife, right? Oh, women.
Praise the Lord.
Potiphar had this wife, and this wife just loved Joseph. She just lusted after Joseph. She wanted what he had. And so Potiphar's wife went to Joseph several times and wanted Joseph to sleep with him. And Joseph wasn't going. You know, how we young people say, he wasn't going. And so he told her and he denied her, but see, that made Potiphar's wife upset. So she went and lied on him, and she told the people, she told her husband, and she told everybody that Joseph had tried to rape her. So Potiphar, of course, being upset, had Joseph thrown in jail. And so Joseph even found favor in jail. You know, he was a favorite of the warden, and so the warden had put him in charge of everything in prison. Everything that goes on in this prison, you're in charge of. And so the warden had no worries with Joseph over his belongings. And that's just an example, because it doesn't matter what the enemy throws at you. You know, when God favors you, even the people around you are going to be blessed. Because we don't know if the warden deserved to have Joseph, but he had Joseph, and he was blessed. In spite of the situation that Joseph was in, he got blessed because Joseph was in his presence. And so while in jail, there were two men. There was the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And they had offended their master, and they were thrown in jail. And so one night, they both had dreams. And the next day they woke up and they were looking puzzled. And so Joseph went to him and said, you know, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. And so the first one, the cupbearer, they both said they had dreams, they didn't understand it. So the cupbearer started with his dream. And so he said, in my dream, I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. And I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand. So I took some grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. And then I handed the cup to Pharaoh. So Joseph said, well, this is what this means. He said that the 3 branches represents 3 days. So in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift you up and restore you to your official position. He's going to restore you to your former position. And he said, but when you do this, when these good things happen to you, remember me. Right? Remember me. I helped you. So remember, when this happens, when all this good that I'm telling you happens, I need you to remember me. I need you to go to Pharaoh for me. Go to Pharaoh and intercede for me. And tell him that I was kidnapped from my homeland. Tell him that, you know, I was lied on and I was thrown in jail and I haven't done anything. But I just need you to remember me. And so, what is my subject? It ain't always about you. So the chief baker, I should say, he heard, you know, he heard Joseph with this dream, and he heard what he had said about the cupbearer, so he said, well, cool. I want him to interpret my dream too. Isn't it crazy how we always want what everybody else has? We always got to have what everybody else has. We don't care what it took for them to get there. We don't care what they had to go through to get there. When we see something good that isn't ours, we just have to have it. And so he went to Joseph with high expectations and said, well, tell me my dream, right? I had this dream. And so in his dream, he said, there were 3 baskets full of white pastries, and they were stacked on top of my head. And he said that the top had a whole bunch of pastries for the Pharaoh. He said, but all of a sudden, birds came and just started eating all the pastries from the top of my head. And so they came and he said, you know, can you explain this to me? And so Joseph said, well, the 3 baskets also represent 3 days. And he said, in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift you up and impale your body on a pole. And then the birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Can you imagine hearing that after that good, you know what I'm saying, revelation that he done gave the cupbearer? Can you imagine? Like, that was the absolute worst news. You gave him the best news, and you gave me the worst news. But see, that's what happens. We always want what other people want. I probably would have rather just not known. Just impale me on a pole. Now I got to think about it for 3 days. What's going to come? I think he would have rather just told Joseph, let's start over and rewind. I don't want to hear this dream anymore. And so, just like Joseph said, 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday. And so Pharaoh decides to throw this big extravaganza for his officials. And just like Joseph said, he took the cupbearer and he restored him and gave him his title back. He gave him it and put him back as the chief cupbearer. But also, just like Joseph said, the chief baker was impaled on a pole. And the crazy part about this entire thing, and it kind of, when I was reading this story, I hadn't read, of course I started from the beginning, and I hadn't read the end yet. What did the chief cupbearer do? He forgot about Joseph. Made me mad. I was reading this, and I was just getting so mad. Because I'm looking at this story with Joseph, and I'm thinking about all this stuff that this man is going through that he didn't do. And I done told you your dream, and you got the nerve to forget 3 days? 3 days you couldn't remember the biggest thing, the best thing that ever happened to you, and you couldn't remember that I was the one who told you. And so he forgot. And so, it bothered me because I just felt like, why was he going through that? I was reading the Bible and I'm like, man, God, you clearly showing that he was a decent man. So why is he going through all of this on your watch? I mean, isn't that how we are? We kind of ask God, why are we going through this? I'm a good one, I'm saved. We got all these people out here doing all this negative stuff in the world, and here I am trying to live a decent life. And so I can imagine Joseph was just fed up, right? I can imagine him just so frustrated. I can imagine him asking God, why me? Why of all people? Why couldn't somebody more deserving of this punishment go through this? And I just thought about how Joseph was waiting. He was waiting on this cupbearer to save him. He was waiting. And I can imagine him just ready to throw in the towel. But what is my subject? It ain't always about you. So we go on, and I started thinking about, how the story didn't make sense to me. And I started thinking about, because I couldn't see the end, right? And so a lot of times when we can't see the end of what's going to happen, we can't understand the process. It would be nice to know how it's going to end, right? It would be nice to know that it's all going to work out. It would be nice to know that, even though God promised us, even though God made these promises to us, we can't see the end. So when we're in the midst of the process, we don't understand it. We don't understand why life is just so tough, why things can't go our way, because we can't see the end. And see, Joseph, he couldn't really see the end, because if he could, he wouldn't have kept saying, well, can you remember me? And he wouldn't have kept sitting there, because he would have known. And so even though he saw the vision, he couldn't understand how he was going to get to that point. And so I just started thinking about that. But see, I realized that sometimes we have to change our perspective, right? Sometimes, we kind of just got to go back and look at the situation again from a different view. Sometimes you got to go back and look at the situation. You got to go back to that dream that you gave up on. You got to go back and listen. You got to go back to, that guy that you was just about to sign the separation papers for. You got to go back and look at it, because sometimes we look at things the wrong way, and it just takes a different perspective. If we can just turn our eyes a different way, things will look differently. And so sometimes you just got to go back. You think about your kids, and God, thank God I don't have any. But you think about your kids, and you think about, the things, you got that kid that just won't do right. And so you kind of just stop praying for him. You just kind of just threw in his house and say, you know what, God, whatever happens, that's with you and him, But sometimes you even got to go back to that situation and just pray over your kids and pray over your family and continue to pray. You just got to look at it a different way. And so, I was thinking this, and this is kind of off subject. But one of the things I was thinking about is, I always hear people say, pray for me. They go to all these people and they say, pray for me, pray for me, pray for me. And they go to these people, but then they go home and they live in misery. Right. And I didn't understand that, because, what's the point if you're going to ask people, pray for me and pray for me? I can remember my grandmother, before she passed, I used to always call her, especially in college. Me and my grandmother had gotten really, really close when I was in college. And it was probably because college was not what I expected, but I would call her all the time and say, okay, Grams, I got this going on. Can you pray for me? or Grams, I'm going through this at work. Can you pray for me? And I honestly believe that my grandmother must have known that her time was coming before she passed, because I can remember taking this big government test, and my mom, she had where the test was about an hour out, and so it was so early. I think we had to check in at 7 a.m. And so you could either drive there early in the morning, or like some people, they would just get a hotel room and stay the night. And I remember my mom, it shocked me, because she was like, well, I'm going to get a hotel, and I'm going to go with you so that you could already be there. I don't even know if I ever told my mom how much I appreciate that, but she's here now, so I'm going to tell you I appreciate that. Because God knows I didn't want to wake up and drive an hour. And so we were there, and I remember her and my grandmother were speaking on the phone, and so my grandmother had asked my mom, could she speak to me? And so she got on the phone, and she's like, how you doing? You ready for the test? Did you study? And I was just like, Grams, please just pray for me. I don't know what it was about my Grams, but I just felt like if she prayed, God had to answer. Whatever she prayed for, God had to answer. So I was so nervous, and I was just like, pray for me, Grams. I need you to pray for real. I know I said it, but I need you to go get on your knees this time. Like, I need you to pray. And I remember my grandmother, she had said something. Usually, she always says, okay, I'm going to pray for you. Okay, I'm going to pray for you. But this time, right before we got off the phone, and I was telling her this, I said, Grams, pray for me. And she said, Aneika, your prayers work too. And I said, what? And she was like, your prayers work too. I was like, well, they don't work like yours, so I need you to pray. But I never forgot that, because I think about how we always are going to people saying, pray for me, but sometimes you got to pray for yourself. Sometimes can't nobody pray for you like you can pray for you. Don't nobody know what all you're going through. And so sometimes we just got to get up. We got to pray for ourselves and intercede for ourselves. It's okay to go and ask the elders and the pastors to pray for me, but when you alone and you at home and you going through, pray for yourself. And so I started thinking about how, we're always, and maybe it's not this church, but I see people and they go to church. And one thing about me, I don't think I've ever really left church upset, at least not this church. I've never really left church upset. I never really understood it. And so I would think about how people would come to church and they would leave upset because they still felt the same void that they felt before they got here. And and I feel like people would be upset at the pastors, because the pastors didn't fix them. I was telling a few of you guys a couple of weeks ago that I can remember. I didn't know if the pastor was in here when I told the story. That I can remember one time when I was depressed, and I went to the pastor and bothered him in his office. And I said, Pastor, what do you do when you're depressed? And he said, read your Bible. And I know my face, I tried to keep a straight face, but in my head, I'm like, what? I'm depressed. Like, I need you to give me something that's a right now fix. Like, what is reading in my head? I sat there and listened to, okay, Pastor, that's great. But I kept thinking, what? I don't have time to read the Bible. I'm depressed right now. I'm crying right now. And so I left the office. I didn't know how I felt when I left the office. But I remember I went home and I said, I am going to read the Bible. I said, I'm going to read the Bible. I don't know what this going to do, but I'm going to read the Bible because the pastor said read the Bible. And I started reading the Bible every single day. I started reading the Bible. I mean, I just started, and I think I started in the New Testament and just started reading. It wasn't a specific place. I just started reading the Bible. And slowly that spirit of depression just started lifting up off of me. Slowly I was just looking and finding myself not crying anymore. And I wasn't stressed like I used to be. And usually when I was stressed for weeks and weeks at a time, maybe it would last a day. And then I would have to say, nope, let me go back to the Bible. But then I also realized even when the spirit lifted up off of me, I had to keep reading because I didn't want it to come back. Sometimes we do things and we try to fix things, but then we say, okay, well, we're good now. So then we close the book back up. But I said, no, I'm going to keep reading every single day because I don't even want that spirit to think that it could come and place itself in me or around me. I was going to keep reading the Bible and keep praying. And so, I told you guys that, and I felt like, I should have just kept reading, and I wanted to just start telling everybody, just read the Bible. And I kept thinking, Lord, you're going to have to help me because I didn't receive it the right way. So how are they going to receive when they're going through to read the Bible? Nobody wants to hear that, right? Because nobody wants to hear that they have to do work.
Go ahead now.
Nobody wants to hear that. That's why everybody going around saying, pray for me, because they want the pastor to lay his hands, but then you don't want to go home and do your own work. Nobody wants to do that. And so, I was thinking that. And so I just felt like, people are constantly walking around waiting on God, just waiting on God, just waiting on God. And I just started thinking that you're not waiting on him, he's waiting on you. Because everything that God is going to do, he's already done. He's already figured it out. He's already figured it out. And so your thing is that it's there. You just have to walk to it and walk through it. You can't worry about you. I hear people say all the time, well, I'm just waiting on God to do this. And he's already done everything that he's going to do. He's already done it. You just got to keep moving. You just got to keep moving. And so don't get me hyped up. So Joseph, waiting on the cupbearer. He was in jail another 2 years. 2 years. You know how we complain when we stress for 2 days? 2 years he was in jail. 2 more years. Not total. He was in jail 2 more years. And so Pharaoh had 2 dreams that he couldn't understand. And no magician in the land, the wisest man, he was calling everybody saying, I need you guys to help me understand this dream. But nobody could tell him, right? Nobody could tell him in all of Egypt. But that cupbearer spoke up. He spoke up and said, I'm reminded of a failure of mine, and I remember a man. And I just started thinking about, you know how you just have that person and somebody's supposed to have your back, and you think that they've just forgotten about you, but God reminds them, and he said, I remember a man when I was in jail, when me and another official was in jail, and I remember we had a dream, and we couldn't understand it, we couldn't interpret it. And so he told us the dream, and he said everything that man spoke of came to pass. Everything he said spoke of. And so, it reminds me just reading that is that it's your gift that makes room for you, right? Like it's not your education, it's not your titles, it's not where you live, it's not your situation, it's your gift that made room for you. And Joseph's gift made room for him. And so Pharaoh went and he told Joseph his dreams. And Joseph said, God is letting you know what he's about to do. And he said, you're going to have 7 years of great prosperity in the land. I mean, just great prosperity. It's just going to be 7 great years. And he said, but afterwards, you're going to have 7 horrible years. Because they're going to be so bad that people aren't even going to remember the 7 great years. And so he said, so what you need to do is you need to go and find a wise man. And you need to put him in charge of everything. And you need to just start keeping, I think he said, 1/5 of the crops. And start storing them away so that after the 7 good years, you'll have something to live on in the 7 bad years. And it just reminded me that, no matter what you're going to go through, God is always going to make sure you're prepared. He's always going to make sure that you're prepared. I was just thinking about, I'm like, part of me was just like, well, why do I have to have the 7 years of bad? But it just reminded me that no matter what you're going through, he's going to make sure that even when it looks horrible around you, when it looks horrible, he's going to make sure that he supplies you with the people and the resources to get you through the bad times. And so, he told Joseph this, and he said, go get you a wise man. And he said that Joseph turned around and he asked everybody, and he said, is there anybody more wise than this man, right? Is there anybody, that can do this that we can put in charge of? And he said, is there anybody, who obviously is so filled with the Spirit of God? And so Pharaoh turned around to Joseph, and he said, well, since God has revealed these dreams to you, and clearly nobody else could do it, I choose you. Yeah. Don't that sound amazing? Yeah. When somebody say, I choose you? Yes. Can you imagine just being all the way at the bottom and the highest person and all the land goes down to the bottom and says, I choose you. I just think about how President Obama says he treats the officials just like he treats the janitor, because you never know where they're going to end. You never know who you speaking to. You looking at this person who looks like they're not nothing. They're not going to be anything. But you treat that person just like you treat everybody else, because you never know who's going going to end up being over you. And so he told Joseph, he said, I choose you. And he said, only me sitting on the throne will be higher than you. It won't be a finger lifted. It won't be a foot lifted in Egypt that you won't know about. And so sometimes you have to recognize a good move, and you have to recognize the difference between a good move and a godly move. Because see, Pharaoh had to recognize that, because he could have looked for somebody good. He could have looked for somebody who could control this and who could count and who knew what 1/5 of something was. He could have looked for that, but he recognized the God in Joseph. And so he didn't just want good. He didn't just want okay. He didn't want just great. He wanted God, because God is just amazing. And he wanted whatever Joseph had, he wanted to be in his land. He wanted to just go throughout his land. And so, we think back, and we're going to go back, and, Joseph back at home, right? Those people, those brothers. Isn't it hard sometimes to forgive people? Oh, it's hard. Because I started thinking about them brothers, and I said, let them stay where they at. I kept thinking, why I wouldn't even want anything to do with them. Well, back at home, Joseph's brothers and father and family, period, they were starving. They were starving because it had been a famine. The good 7 years were gone, way behind them, and they were starving. And so Jacob went and told them, he said, what are y'all standing around here, just staring at walls for? Y'all need to go down to Egypt and get some of that stuff that they stored away so that we won't die. And so, after Joseph, Jacob had a son by the name of Benjamin. And that was his baby, right? That was his baby. And he said, the last time I sent y'all, my son Joseph didn't come back, so I'm going to keep the baby with me. I kind of laughed at that, because I kind of felt like Jacob was like, well, whatever with y'all, I'm just going to make sure that this one right here is good. This is my prized possession right here, so I'm going to keep this with me. And so, he sent the brothers, and the brothers went, and see, they didn't know, right? They didn't know. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know that Joseph had just gotten put up here and was over all of the land. They didn't know that. And so they went to him, and what happened? They bowed before Joseph. They bowed before him. That same dream that they hated him for, they went to him, and they didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. And they went to him, and they bowed, not knowing who he was. And it's just an example. You don't know who somebody's going to be. Stop overlooking people. Stop looking at these people that come up in these messed up situations and not knowing, thinking they just going to be another statistic. They're just going to be another statistic. This man was in slavery. And now he's over all of Egypt. The only one he answers to is Pharaoh. And so they went to him, and fast forward, his brother, Joseph, we don't even talk about everything, the little jokes and games and stuff he played with him. But fast forward, Joseph told them, go back and get all of your family. Go back and get all of your family, pack them up and bring them here so that you can live. And I just thought that was so amazing. I thought that even after everything that they did to him, even after everything, sometimes, it's hard to be the bigger person, right? Sometimes we go through this stuff, and especially when we know we didn't do anything. It is hard to be the bigger person, because sometimes it's easy to just say, no, deal with it. You made your bed, now lie in it. You kicked me out, and you sent me, and now here I am, this great man. But he didn't do that. He forgave them, and he wept, and he cried. And he told them, go back and get your family. Go back and get them, and so that y'all will start bring everything that y'all own, bring them here, and we're going to make a place for y'all. And I just started thinking about, it's not always about you. Joseph couldn't understand why he was going through what he was going through. He couldn't understand, why it had to be him. Why couldn't it be one of them other brothers? Why couldn't it be them? He couldn't understand it. But see, he didn't know that he was going to end up being the savior of his family. He saw that they were going to bow, but he didn't know they were going to be starving. He didn't know that he was going to be their only resource to survive. And so, I was thinking about that, just how Joseph was waiting on that cupbearer, and just how his brothers, they didn't know it. They were waiting on Joseph. And I started thinking about how you have to really, really think about how it's not always about you. Sometimes you don't want to do stuff. Sometimes you don't want to get up, but people are waiting waiting on you. You got to get to where you need to get in order for people to be blessed. And so, I started thinking in the suffering, it's not always about you. Yeah, we know that sometimes we do things and we have to deal with the consequences. But it's those things that we don't understand why we're going through it, because we're doing what we're supposed to do. But sometimes you got to realize somebody is waiting on you. You have to leave this place. You got to leave this place and get up, because you got to finish what God told you to do. Somebody's waiting on you. And I just started, what are we doing? What are we not doing that God called us to do? What are we not doing that God gave us a vision for? But we're sitting around because we just want to feel sorry for ourselves. Get up. Get up. Because somebody is waiting on you. I mean, how many of us, were going to school and we wanted to be lawyers, but it got too hard. And so we wanted to just quit school. But we don't know. What if there's somebody who's going to need us to defend them? What if there's somebody who's going to be facing life in prison and you were supposed to be their lawyer, but you want to quit school because it got hard? Somebody's waiting on you. You know what? I was thinking about all these different scenarios when God was giving me this message, and I just started thinking about all the things we don't never understand. We don't never understand, and we just want to throw in the towel. But what would we throw in the towel if we knew that somebody was waiting, or somebody couldn't survive if we didn't do what God told us to do? It's not always about you. If you got kids, no, you may not be a millionaire, but set them up so they can be millionaires, and set them up so their kids can be millionaires. There are people who are going through a divorce, and you're supposed to help them get through that divorce, but you can't, because you haven't saved your own marriage. They're waiting. They're waiting on you. There are people who are depressed. There are people who are walking around thinking suicide right now, and they were supposed to walk by you, and you were supposed to encourage them, but you didn't, because you upset that you ain't got $200 extra than what you needed. It's people that's waiting on you. We got to get up and stop living this life of selfishness. It's not always about you. It's things, it's people that need you to encourage them. It's people that need you to help them start their businesses and help them get their kids in order and help them tell them what they're supposed to do. But you're sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. We got to get up. Get up. Get up and go back to that vision that God gave us, because he gave it to you for a reason. It's a reason he told you to do something. Stop sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. I want to be this compassionate person, and I want to love you. And I am a compassionate. I listen to people's stories, and sometimes people start crying, and I instantly start crying because I instantly feel for them. But sometimes I have to tell them, I can't feel sorry for you. You got to get up. You got to get up. And I think about some of the things that my friends go through, and I try, part of me is just like, I get it. I get that you're going through. I get it. I want to sit here and I want to cry with you and I want to tell you everything's going to be okay, but you can't stay here. Yes. You got people that's waiting on you to get to where you need. They got places they got to go, and you got to be their resources for them to get there. So get up. And I just ask you just continue to remember that it ain't always about you. And I ask you guys to pray my strength.